Figured I'd run through this one while I had it fresh in my mind. Just a little bit on knife sharpening, some of the things I do, some of the things I use. probably not probably not the best way to sharpen a knife, but it's what I do with the tools that I have around me. I think for the examples today I'm gonna use for knives. I'm gonna have this little multi-tool. It's got a little serrated edge right along there, and then the straight edge right there. And the other knife is my trusty Gerber. I don't go into the woods without this. There's various things that I use to sharpen. I've got this sharpener, which I don't use on any of my knives that I carry with me. I use it more for kitchen knives and that sort of thing, because that's really what this type of sharpener is made for. It only really does one type of edge. You can't really adjust that in there. It's just set at one little angle, which is a lot better for chopping and doing the stuff in the kitchen. The other tool I use a lot is this little sharpening stone. It's made by Smith's. I can't remember the exact model number, but it's got a coarse side, which is the yellow, which is if your knife's fairly dull and you need to grind a bit more to get it, you start off with that, and then you move over to the other side, which is finer grain, which will get it decently sharp. Also, if I really want to touch up my knives, I usually have a leather belt of some sort. This is since the one I usually use, this is my work belt, but it's got a leather, it's made, if I can get the camera angles right, until it gets the zipper part up there. This part is all leather. Which, basically, when you run your knife along that, it will, after you do the fine sharpening, it will kind of smooth it out and make it more like glass. If you've ever been cut by a sharp piece of glass, you'll know how sharp that is. Anywho, on with the sharpening. Let me show you a little bit of what I do here. It's kind of impromptu, so it's, not the best, but hopefully we'll get some tips out of it. Start with this. Usually I clean off a bit first, but I'm just doing demonstration right here. I can save the complicated shit for later. Now I'll put this down for a bit. Oops, sit up there, you bugger. Alrighty. Now, starting with this, Make this a little bit easier to fiddle with. Now with this, you don't want to be sharpening it, you know, don't want to be sharpening it too high of an angle, because you'll just be grinding your edge down and not sharpening it all. You don't want to be at too low an angle, because then you'll pretty much just be polishing your blade. I can't remember the degree on this angle, but you don't want it. You want to like a happy medium, depending on what the grain is, or depending on what type of edge you want on it. I'm not gonna go into all the edges. That's like complete. That's stuff that my brain's not up for right this second. But anywho, once you get the angle right and all that, pretty much you just hold this level and you want to smoothly run it across, kind of like that. And then you do the same thing on the other side. What you do on one side of the blade, you want to do on the other. You do that. You do that. You want to do that. I usually try to go for 10 times per side. I'm not on count here, so but I'll just do a few times on each side. Not exactly 20, but it's fairly sharp there. And then with this may be a bit more difficult for me, but let's see if I can wrap this little bugger around my leg and get that. This camera's not the greatest, so you might not be able to see this, but pretty much on the belt you're going to want to do the same thing, but since it's a lot finer, you're going to have to do it a lot more times, like 20, 30 times for each side. I'll just go over it a few. It's pretty much the same motion as on there, but you're gonna do that on each side. I'm not gonna bother trying to get it shaving sharp in this video, but pretty much what running it along this leather does is it's called stropping, and what it basically does is polishes off all the little tiny metal chunks, the little microscopic metal chunks that come from the sharpening on the stone. It's not really a stone, but same sort of idea. That pretty much polishes off those little fine things and leaves you with a nice razor sharp blade. I'll probably go more in depth on these techniques at some point in time, but that's how I sharpen those knives, and then that's nice and sharp there. I'm not gonna throw it at anything, I don't wanna cut anyone's eye out or any of that shit. But that'll cut wire or whatever the hell you want to cut with it. Now, with the little serrated blades, you can't really you can't do those serrated blades like with the stone or anything. You can do the front part. You can do this front smooth part with it, but the serrated blades will just screw up your sharpening stone. What I do with those, I have a little mini honing steel, which I unfortunately couldn't find this morning. I don't know where I put it. But with that, you want to take the small honing steel and kind of just run it through the different parts of the serration. You don't want to run it along like you would this other edge, but you want to kind of just run it through those, and that'll get those nice and sharp. When I find the honing steel, I'll go in more depth on that, which I plan to do on the other videos. Now I have a Dremel which I could use to sharpen knives as well, you know, if I need to grind them down if they've gotten damaged of any sort. But that's the basics of what I do to sharpen my knives, and it keeps them pretty sharp, and they don't, especially at Gerber, that thing don't dull for anything. Anywho, I hope you learned a little bit from this. I'll go more in depth a bit later. At some point when I can find them, I'll probably go more in depth on the serrated edges. But that's how I keep my knives sharp, my edges sharp. And with that, take care, keep them sharp, and keep your stick on the ice.